As we approach the turning of the year, there's an energy many of us feel. Perhaps you notice it too, that familiar pressure, the list of what we meant to accomplish, the blank paper, waiting for new resolutions. The stream of collective consciousness gently pushing us toward better, more fixed. But what if, just for now, we went against this stream? What if we paused before planning tomorrow and honored today instead? Not to become someone else, but to recognize who we already are. To see the flowers we've grown before planting new seeds. Wherever you are right now, whether it's your morning beginning or your evening winding down, you're not alone in this listening. We're gathered here, across time zones and distances, breathing together in this shared space. Take a moment to feel your breath, the rising and falling of your chest. There's nothing you need to fix or change right now. Just allow yourself to be here, exactly as you are. If it feels right, share where you're listening from. You're helping create this circle of practice together. And please, get comfortable. This isn't about doing. It's about being. There's something about the turning of a year that invites us to think about new beginnings. We look at the calendar and think, that's when I'll start. January 1st, when the year is fresh and clean, that's when I'll finally be more present, more intentional, more alive in my own life. It's a gentle form of postponement, isn't it? Not harsh or lazy, but hopeful, believing that some future moment will be the right time to truly begin. But what if we don't have to wait? What if this moment, not January 1st, not when everything is perfect, not when you're finally ready, what if this moment is already the right time? There's a story from the 13th century about a young monk who learned this lesson in the most unexpected way. The Zen master Dogen, who would later become one of the most influential teachers in Buddhist history, was a young monk studying in China. He was serious about his practice, hungry for enlightenment, searching everywhere for the deepest teachings. One scorching summer day, he encountered an elderly monk outside the monastery. The old man was the Tenzo, the head cook, and he was laboriously drying mushrooms in the blazing sun. His face was drenched with sweat. His movements were slow with age and heat. The work looked exhausting. Dogen, moved by compassion and perhaps a bit of youthful arrogance, approached the old cook. "Venerable sir," he said, "you should rest in the shade. This work is too hard for someone your age in this heat. Let the younger monks dry the mushrooms." The old Tenzo straightened up, looked at young Dogen, and said something that would change the young monk's understanding forever. "Young man, I am not other people." Dogen was confused. Of course, the old monk wasn't other people, but what did that have to do with drying mushrooms? He pressed further. "But venerable sir, why not rest now and work later? when it's cooler. The Tenzo smiled, wiped his brow, and replied, "If not now, when?" Then he went back to turning the mushrooms, one by one, with complete attention. This moment, this exchange under the burning sun, held everything Dogen had been searching for in all his studies. The old cook wasn't just teaching about mushrooms. He was demonstrating something essential about what it means to be truly alive. I am not other people. This moment belongs to you alone. No one else can live it for you. No one else can be present in your place. The work of being here, fully here, cannot be delegated or postponed. If not now, when? This breath won't come again. This moment won't wait for better conditions, more energy, a clearer schedule. Life is happening now, in the drying of mushrooms, in the sweat on your brow, in the simple act of tending to what's in front of you. The Buddha taught that mindfulness means maintaining awareness of our body, feelings, mind, and the world around us in the present moment. He said, "Do not pursue the past. Do not lose yourself in the future. The past no longer is. The future has not yet come." Looking deeply at life as it is in the very here and now, the practitioner dwells in stability and freedom. But what does this actually look like? How does this wisdom translate from ancient texts and monastery gardens into our daily lives? Think about this morning. When you brushed your teeth, were you brushing your teeth? Or were you already mentally at work, rehearsing a difficult conversation, reviewing your to-do list? When you ate breakfast, did you taste it? Or was the food just fuel, eaten mechanically, while scrolling through news or worrying about traffic? These seem like small things. Brushing teeth, eating breakfast, drying mushrooms. What difference does it make if our mind is elsewhere? The difference is this: these small moments are our life. String them together and they become hours, days, years. And if we're not present for them, if we're always living 5 minutes ahead or 5 years in the future, then we're not really living at all. We're ghosts in our own existence, haunting our days rather than inhabiting them. The old Tenzo understood something profound. Every action, no matter how humble, is an opportunity to be fully alive. Drying mushrooms in the hot sun isn't separate from spiritual practice. It is spiritual practice when done with complete presence and care. There's no task too mundane for this quality of attention, no moment too ordinary to deserve our full presence. You're washing dishes. Your hands are in warm water, soap bubbles catching light, the rhythm of scrubbing and rinsing. But where is your mind? Is it rehearsing an argument from 3 days ago? Planning tomorrow's meeting? Counting the minutes until you can do something more important? What if washing dishes is not in the way of your life, but is your life happening right now in the form of warm water, and clean plates. You're in a conversation with someone you love. They're telling you about their day, their worry, their small joy. But are you really listening? Or are you half present, part of your attention already leaking toward your phone, your own response, the thing you need to do next? I am not other people means no one else can give this person your presence right now. If not now, when? Means this conversation, this moment of connection won't wait. We live so much of our lives in a kind of fog, not fully asleep, but not fully awake either. Going through the motions. Our body does one thing while our mind does three others. We call this multitasking and consider it a skill, but really it's a way of not being anywhere fully. And beneath this constant distraction, there's often something we're running from. Some feeling we don't want to feel. Some emptiness or loneliness or anxiety that arises when we stop long enough to be still. So we fill every moment with doing, thinking, planning, consuming, anything to avoid the rawness of simply being here. Brother Phap Hu, a Buddhist monk, shared something honest about his own experience with this. He noticed that when he caught himself in distraction and checked what was really present, he often found loneliness underneath, a feeling of wanting to be seen, to be valued, to matter. The busyness wasn't really about the importance of the work. It was about covering up that tender, uncomfortable feeling. This is deeply human. We're not failing at practice when we notice this. We're just seeing clearly what's actually here. The question, "What are you doing?" is not meant to judge us. It's meant to wake us up, to bring us back from wherever we've drifted to, back to the only place we can actually live, right here, right now. When we ask ourselves this question with kindness, we might discover all sorts of truths. We're scrolling through our phone because we're avoiding a difficult task. We're snapping at someone we love because we're hungry and tired but haven't admitted it. We're working late again because we're afraid of disappointing people, afraid of being ordinary, afraid of not being enough. Or we might discover something beautiful. We're breathing. We're here. Despite everything, we are alive right now, and that itself is extraordinary. The practice isn't about achieving some perfect state of unbroken presence. That would just be another form of striving, another future goal to chase. The practice is much gentler than that. It's about noticing when we've left and coming back, noticing again, coming back again, 1,000 times a day if necessary, with patience and kindness toward ourselves. Each time we notice we've been lost in thought and we return to the breath, that's not failure, that's the practice itself. That's the moment of waking up. You're driving and realize you don't remember the last 5 minutes of the road. That recognition, "Oh, I wasn't here," that's awareness arising. Feel your hands on the wheel. Notice the car in front of you. Come back to your senses. That's the practice. You're eating and notice You've already finished half your meal without tasting a single bite. Don't scold yourself. Just notice. Taste the next bite fully. Feel the texture. That's coming home. You're with your child, and realize you've been physically present but mentally absent, running through work problems while they show you their drawing. The moment you notice, you have a choice. Let go of the work thoughts. Look at the drawing. Really see it. Really see them. That's love in action. The old Tenzo drying mushrooms wasn't doing anything complicated. He wasn't performing some advanced meditation technique. He was just there, completely there, for the work in front of him. And in that simple presence, he was living his life fully, instead of waiting for life to begin somewhere else, sometime later, under better conditions. This is what the question, "What are you doing?" invites us toward. Not a perfect performance of presence, but a sincere willingness to show up for our own life, to inhabit our moments instead of haunting them, to be the one living our life rather than watching it pass by from a distance. Because here's what the old cook knew that young Dogen was just beginning to learn. Enlightenment is not somewhere else. It's not in the future, when you're finally good enough, accomplished enough, peaceful enough. It's right here, in the ordinary moments, waiting for you to arrive. Drying mushrooms, washing dishes, answering an email, listening to rain, holding someone's hand, breathing in, breathing out. The sacred and the ordinary are not separate. Every moment is both. It's only our presence or absence that makes the difference. So right now, as you listen to these words, you might pause and ask yourself this question. Not as criticism, not as one more thing to add to your self-improvement list, but as a gentle invitation home. What am I doing? Where is my attention right now? Where is my mind? Am I here, or have I drifted somewhere else? And if you've drifted, which is perfectly human, perfectly normal, can you simply come back? Feel your breath. Feel your body. Notice the sounds around you. This is your life, happening now. I am not other people. This moment is yours, alone. No one else can live it for you. If not now, when? This breath won't come again. The answer the old Tenzo was living, the answer written in his patient hands turning mushrooms in the sun, is simply this: I am here. I am showing up for my life. I am being present for what is, exactly as it is, right now. That's the practice. That's the path. That's the answer that changes everything, not because it transforms you into someone else, but because it brings you home to the life you're already living. We often end the year cataloguing what we didn't do, the resolutions we broke in February, The habits we didn't change, the goals we set with such hope that now sit abandoned, evidence of another year where we weren't quite enough. There's a stream that flows through all of us as the year comes to an end. It flows in only one direction, toward what's wrong, what's missing, what needs fixing. We stand at the edge of a new year and automatically begin the inventory of failures, shortcomings, all the ways we fell short of who we thought we'd be by now. This is such a powerful current that most of us don't even notice we're being pulled by it. It feels natural, responsible, even to focus on what needs improvement. That's how we grow, isn't it? That's how we become better. But what if we paused here? What if we went against this stream, just for a moment? What if you asked yourself right now, what actually grew in me this year? Not what you accomplished or achieved, not the promotions or possessions or external markers of success, but what quality of heart, what inner capacity, what small or large flowering of the spirit did you cultivate? This is harder to answer than it should be, isn't it? Maybe you developed more patience this year. You breathed through moments that used to make you snap. You stayed present when you used to check out. That's a flower. Maybe you found courage. You spoke a truth you'd been afraid to voice. You set a boundary you'd been avoiding. You admitted you needed help. That's a flower. Maybe you discovered rest. For the first time in years, you allowed yourself to stop without drowning in guilt about what you weren't doing. That's a flower. Maybe it was resilience. You kept going through something that could have broken you. Or curiosity. You started asking, why, instead of just judging yourself. Or deeper understanding, not of philosophy, but of your own pain, your own patterns, your own heart. These are the flowers. And most of the time, we walk right past them without noticing. Why is this so hard? Why can we catalogue our failures in detail, but struggle to name a single quality we've grown? Part of it is how our brains are wired. We inherited neural pathways shaped by survival. Our ancestors stayed alive by remembering the dangerous berry, the threatening situation, the thing that could hurt them. Brains that paid more attention to negative information were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. So we come equipped with what psychologists call a negativity bias. We notice, remember, and give more weight to negative experiences than positive ones. It kept us alive as a species, but it also means we walk through our lives seeing primarily what's wrong, what's lacking, what needs fixing, and we miss the flowers that are actually blooming right now. Think about feedback you've received this year. Maybe at work, maybe from family, maybe from friends or strangers. If you received 10 compliments and 1 criticism, which one occupies your thoughts? Which one can you recall word for word? Most of us can recite our criticisms verbatim, the exact words, the specific sting of them, the way they confirmed our worst fears about ourselves. But the compliments, they slide away like water. We know intellectually that people said kind things, appreciative things, but the details evaporate while the criticism remains etched in permanent ink. This isn't a personal failing. This is the human condition. This is the brain doing what evolution designed it to do, giving 5 times more attention to what's wrong than what's right. But here's the problem. We're not running from predators anymore. We're sitting in relative safety, often with more than enough, surrounded by people who care about us. Yet, our brains are still scanning for threats, still giving disproportionate weight to the negative, still convincing us that the one thing that went wrong defines the day more than the 9 things that went right. You can have a good day with your children, patient, present, enjoying each other for hours. Then you snap at them once before bed. As you fall asleep, what are you replaying? The one bad moment or the good hours? You can give a presentation that helps people, that lands well, that receives genuine appreciation. But if one person looks bored, what do you think about on the drive home? You can practice patience, courage, resilience, kindness, real flowers, genuine growth, and still lie in bed, thinking about the one moment you lost your temper, the one day you fell back into an old pattern, the one way you haven't yet changed. The compost pile gets all the attention while the flowers bloom unnoticed. This is why going against the stream matters. This is why we need to actively, intentionally turn our attention toward what's actually growing, not because we're being fake or bypassing our struggles, but because we're telling the whole truth instead of just half of it. The whole truth is, yes, you struggled this year. Yes, you made mistakes. Yes, there are things you wish you'd done differently. And also, you grew. You cultivated qualities that weren't there before, or weren't as strong. You showed up for yourself and others in ways that mattered, even if they felt small in the moment. When we only focus on what needs fixing, we're telling ourselves a partial story. We're saying, my suffering is real, but my flowering isn't. We're giving weight to our struggles, but dismissing our growth as not counting, not enough, not worthy of recognition. This does something to us over time. It makes us tired. It makes us feel like we're always falling short, always failing, always not enough, no matter what we do. And from that exhausted, depleted place, it's so much harder to grow anything new. But when we pause to honor what we've already cultivated, when we let ourselves see the flowers, something shifts. It's not about becoming arrogant or complacent. It's not about pretending everything is perfect or bypassing real struggles. It's about telling the whole truth. Yes, there are weeds in the garden. Yes, there's work to do. And also, Look at these flowers. Look at what you've already grown through rain and drought, through difficulty and doubt. The Buddha taught about the importance of what he called gladdening the mind. He said that spiritual practice isn't only about seeing suffering clearly, it's also about recognizing the wholesome, seeing what's good and beautiful and true in ourselves and the world. He taught his students to take joy in their own goodness, not out of pride, but out of truth. Because here's what happens when we acknowledge our flowers. We water them. Attention is like water in a garden. Whatever we give our attention to grows. If we only notice our failings, we become people who fail, not because we fail more, but because that's all we can see, and what we see shapes what becomes possible. But if we learn to notice the flowers too, if we train ourselves to see patience when it appears, to recognize kindness when we offer it, to acknowledge the moments we show up, even when it's hard, we become people who can see possibilities. We become people who know that growth is real, change is possible, and we are capable of more than our harshest inner voice would have us believe. So right now, in this moment of listening, can you ask yourself this question again? What flower have I grown this year? Don't rush past it. Don't let the critical voice jump in with yes, but, and that doesn't count. Just pause and look honestly at the garden of your year. Maybe it's a small flower. Maybe it bloomed only once. Maybe it's not the flower you wished for or expected. But is there something? Some moment of patience where you used to have only frustration? Some spark of curiosity where there used to be cynicism? Some sliver of rest in a life that's been nothing but motion? Some capacity to feel your feelings instead of immediately running from them? Can you see it? Can you name it? And here's what matters most. Can you let yourself recognize it without immediately undermining it? Because that's what we do, isn't it? We have a moment of growth and immediately follow it with, but I should have done it sooner, or it's not enough, or other people do this so much better. We plant flowers and then criticize them for not being redwoods. What if we just let the flower be a flower? You are here right now, willing to look at yourself honestly, willing to consider that maybe you've grown in ways you haven't acknowledged. That itself is a flower. That's courage. That's curiosity. That's a capacity for reflection that not everyone exercises. You made it through this year. Whatever it held, loss, confusion, joy, struggle, small victories, devastating defeats, you're here. That's resilience. That's a flower that deserves to be seen. Maybe you were kind to someone when you didn't have to be. Maybe you told the truth when lying would have been easier. Maybe you asked for help instead of pretending you were fine. Maybe you apologized. Maybe you kept showing up for therapy. for practice, for the slow work of healing. Maybe you let yourself feel something you'd been avoiding for years. These matter. These are real. These are the flowers growing in the garden of who you are becoming. And the practice of recognizing them isn't indulgent or self-congratulatory. It's necessary. It's medicine for the part of us that's been convinced we're fundamentally broken and only fixing will save us. You are here. You are trying. You are growing, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when it's so slow, you can't see it happening. And that is enough. Not, that will be enough when you do more. Not, that should be enough, but you still need to improve. That is enough, right now, exactly as it is. The flowers you've grown this year are real. They count. They matter. And before you plant new seeds, before you make lists of who you need to become, take a moment to honor what's already blooming. Because growth doesn't come from constant criticism. It comes from ground that's been tended with care, acknowledged with gratitude, seen with clear and loving eyes. See your flowers, name them if you can, and know that the very act of recognition is itself another flower, opening, the flower of self-compassion, blooming in the garden of your becoming. There's a question that sometimes surfaces in the quiet moments, maybe when you're looking at old photographs, or lying awake at 3 a.m, or driving alone with nothing but your thoughts for company. If you could go back, what would you do differently? Not the big dramatic things necessarily, not winning the lottery, or choosing a different career path, or moving to a different city. But the small daily things, the moments you were physically present but mentally absent, the conversations you half listened to, the people you loved but never quite showed up for fully. If you're honest with yourself, what rises to the surface? For many of us, the answer has something to do with presence, with really being there for the moments and the people who mattered most. Not someday, not later, not when things calm down, but then, in those unrepeatable moments that seemed so ordinary at the time. We all know intellectually that nothing lasts forever. We know people we love will eventually leave our lives through distance, through change, through death. We know this the way we know the earth revolves around the sun. It's a fact, filed away somewhere in our understanding. But knowing something intellectually and living with that knowledge are entirely different things. You can know that your parents are aging and still be impatient on the phone with them, rushing through the call to get back to whatever felt more urgent. You can know your children are growing up and still spend dinner scrolling through your device while they try to tell you about their day. You can know your partner won't be there forever and still take them for granted, offering distracted half attention instead of genuine presence. This is the gap between knowing and living, between understanding impermanence as concept and feeling it as reality. The Buddha taught about this gap constantly. He used the Pali word anicca, impermanence, the truth that all things arise and pass away. But he didn't teach it as philosophy to memorize. He taught it as something to see directly, to feel in the body, to understand through lived experience. He said to his disciples, "All conditioned things are impermanent." When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. Not turns away from life, but from the suffering that comes from clinging to what cannot stay, from living as if we have infinite time, from postponing presence until some mythical later that may never arrive. Think about someone you care about deeply. Bring their face to mind right now. When was the last time you were truly, completely present with them? Not just in the same room, but genuinely there, listening without planning your response, looking at them without your mind already on the next thing, touching them with full awareness that this moment of connection is a gift, not a guarantee. For most of us, those moments are rare, not because we don't love deeply. We do. But because we're operating under this unexamined assumption that there will always be another chance. Tomorrow we'll be more present. Next week we'll have that real conversation. After this busy season ends, we'll finally give them our full attention. When things settle down, when we're less stressed, when we have more time, then we'll really show up with. But tomorrow isn't promised. Next week might not come. And even if it does, we'll likely be just as distracted, just as busy, just as convinced that presence can wait. You're having breakfast with your child before school. They're telling you about something that matters to them. A friend, a fear, a small triumph. But you're checking email, mentally reviewing your morning meeting, half listening, while most of your attention is already at work. Years from now, you won't remember that email, but your child might remember the feeling of not being heard, of not quite mattering enough to capture your full attention. And you might remember, with that particular ache that comes from seeing too late, all the breakfasts you were there for, but not really there. You're on the phone with your mother. She's telling you the same story she's told before, moving slowly through details you've heard many times. And you're impatient, making polite sounds while thinking about everything else you need to do, waiting for a break in the conversation so you can say goodbye and get back to your list. One day, that phone won't ring anymore. The number will disconnect, and you'll want those rambling stories back. You'll want the sound of her voice taking its time, the repetition you found tedious, one more chance to just listen, really listen, without the internal pressure to move on to more important things. You're sitting with your partner at the end of the day. You're both tired, maybe a little distant. They mention something about their day, and you give a minimal response, eyes on the television or your phone. It seems like a nothing moment, forgettable, the kind of interaction you'll have thousands more of. Except you won't necessarily have thousands more. You might, but you might not. And even if you do, this specific moment, their specific mood tonight, the particular way the evening light is coming through the window, the exact tone of their voice right now, this precise configuration of conditions will never happen again. This is what the Buddha meant when he taught impermanence. Not as a depressing truth meant to make us sad, but as a wake-up call. A reminder that life is happening now, in these seemingly ordinary moments, and if we're not present for them, we're not present for our life. There's a teaching story about a king who came to the Buddha, troubled by the realization that he was aging. He'd seen his reflection and been shocked by the grey in his hair, the lines on his face. He asked the Buddha if everyone ages, if everyone dies. The Buddha confirmed this truth simply and directly. Yes, all beings age. All beings die. Everything that arises passes away. The king, confronted with this reality he'd been avoiding, had a choice. He could despair, or he could wake up. The story tells us he chose to wake up, to practice, to live with awareness, to stop postponing what mattered most. We have the same choice every single day. When you notice you're half present with someone you love, you can continue sleepwalking through the moment, or you can wake up. Right there, mid-conversation, you can make a different choice. Put the phone down, turn off the television, let the mental to-do list quiet for a moment. Look at this person in front of you. Really look at them. Listen to what they're saying as if it matters, because it does. Not perfectly. You don't need to achieve some ideal state of unwavering presence. Just a little more awake than you were a moment ago. Just aware enough to recognize, oh, I'm here with someone I love, and this moment is real, and it won't come again. That recognition itself is a practice. That moment of waking up, that's the practice. The Buddha taught that when we truly understand impermanence, 3 things naturally arise in us. First, a sense of preciousness. Everything becomes more vivid, more valuable, when we know it won't last forever. Second, a letting go of grasping. We hold things more lightly, with an open hand rather than a tight fist, because we understand we can't ultimately hold on to anything anyway. Third, a motivation to practice now, not later, not someday, but in this moment, because this moment is all we ever actually have. You don't need to wait for a crisis to feel this. You don't need to lose someone to wake up to their presence. You can choose right now to be a little more aware, a little more present, a little more awake to the gift of the people still in your life. Your friend texts you. You could send a quick, distracted response. Or you could pause, Really read what they wrote and respond with full attention. That's practicing presence. Your colleague wants to tell you something. You could half listen while finishing an email, or you could turn toward them, make eye contact, and actually be there for what they need to share. That's honoring impermanence through presence. Your dog greets you at the door with that boundless enthusiasm dogs have. You could give an absent pat on the head while your mind is elsewhere. Or you could kneel down, really pet them, feel their warmth, their aliveness, knowing their life is even shorter than yours, and every greeting is precious. That's living with awareness of anicca. These aren't grand gestures. They're simple choices to be here, instead of somewhere else in your mind. But string enough of these choices together, and they become a different way of living, a way that doesn't require looking back with regret, wondering where all the time went, and why you weren't really there for it. If you could go back, you'd probably be more present. You'd listen more fully. You'd savor the ordinary moments instead of rushing through them. You'd show up for people while they were still there to show up for. You can't go back. None of us can. But you can start now. Right now, wherever you are, whoever is in your life, they're here now. Not forever, but now. And now is when presence matters. Now is when love can be expressed through the simple act of being fully available. Now is when you can choose to wake up to the miraculous fact that you're alive at the same time as these people you care about, sharing this brief, beautiful, impermanent experience of being human together. The teaching of impermanence isn't meant to make us morbid or anxious. It's meant to make us alive, awake to what we have while we have it, present for the people we love while they're still here to love. So if that question comes up for you, if I could go back, what would I do differently? Let it be a gentle teacher, not a harsh critic. Let it show you what matters to you, and then let it point you back to now, to this breath, to whoever is in your life right now, waiting for you to really see them, really hear them, really be with them. Because you can't change the past, but you can honor it by living more wakefully in the present. You can take what you see in hindsight and let it inform how you choose to be right now. That's not regret. That's wisdom arising from experience. That's the gift of reflection when it leads to transformation rather than just rumination. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to wait. You don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to begin. One present moment at a time, one conscious choice at a time, one small act of showing up fully instead of living half there. The people you love are here now. Be here with them. Not someday. Not after you finish everything on your list. Not when you're less busy or less tired or less distracted. Now, with all your beautiful, imperfect, human presence. Because one day, if someone asks you, If you could go back, what would you do differently? You'll be able to answer honestly. I was there. I showed up. I didn't do it perfectly, but I was present for the moments that mattered. I loved the people in my life while they were still there to love. And that will be enough. Imagine for a moment that you are a garden. Not metaphorically, but actually, you are earth and seeds, roots reaching down and stems reaching up, a living ecosystem of growth and decay happening all at once. This isn't just a pretty image. It's closer to the truth of what we are than we usually recognize. Inside you right now are seeds of every possible quality. Seeds of patience and seeds of anger, seeds of courage and seeds of fear, seeds of compassion and seeds of cruelty. They're all there, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. Some have already grown into full plants, well established in the soil of your being. Maybe anxiety is a sturdy weed with deep roots. Maybe kindness is a flower that blooms regularly. Maybe humor is a climbing vine that shows up unexpectedly. Maybe grief is a dark corner where certain plants grow thick and tangled. This is your inner garden. And unlike an outdoor garden with a single growing season, yours is always active, always sprouting, growing, flowering, wilting, composting, beginning again. The Buddha taught about this using different language. He spoke of seeds in our consciousness, bija in Sanskrit, that lie dormant until they're watered by conditions. He taught that we're not fixed, solid selves, but rather processes, ever-changing collections of conditions, meeting other conditions. When someone is kind to you, they water your seeds of happiness and trust. When someone is cruel, they water your seeds of hurt and defensiveness. When you watch the news, certain seeds get watered. When you spend time in nature, different seeds get watered. Every conversation, every experience, every thought, they're all rain, falling on the garden, determining what grows. This is both sobering and empowering. Sobering because it means we're porous, affected by everything around us. We can't pretend that what we consume, information, entertainment, conversations, environments, doesn't matter. It all matters. It's all rain in the garden. But empowering because it means we're not stuck with whatever has grown so far. Gardens can be tended. New seeds can be planted. Weeds can be managed. And we get to choose, at least partially, what gets watered and what gets left to dry out. A good gardener knows when to let the rain in and when to shelter the garden. Maybe you have a friend who, whenever you spend time with them, leaves you feeling depleted, anxious, or small. That's rain, but it's rain that waters the seeds you're trying not to grow. A good gardener might create a boundary there, not from meanness, but from wisdom, from knowing what their garden needs to thrive. Maybe there's a website you visit that makes you feel inadequate or angry or scattered every single time. That's rain too. You can choose to close that tab, to stop standing in that particular storm. That's not avoidance. That's tending the garden. Maybe there's a voice in your head, your own voice, or an internalized voice from your past that constantly criticizes and belittles you. That's rain falling on seeds of shame and inadequacy. You can't stop the voice immediately, but you can start noticing it, questioning it, choosing not to water those seeds with your belief and attention. Boundaries aren't walls. They're not about shutting everything out or pretending difficult things don't exist. They're more like a gardener's thoughtful decisions about what gets to influence the growing conditions. But here's where it gets interesting, where the metaphor deepens into something richer. A good gardener is not afraid of compost. Compost is decomposing matter, things that have died, broken down, turned into something that looks and smells like decay. It's not pleasant to work with. It's messy and smelly, and most people would rather not touch it. But every experienced gardener knows that compost is gold. It's what turns poor soil into rich soil. It's what feeds the flowers. It's where transformation happens, where what seemed like waste becomes nourishment. In your inner garden, the compost is your pain, your confusion, your fear, your shame, your anger. All the stuff you'd rather not have. All the experiences you wish you could skip or delete or pretend didn't happen. Our instinct is to push this away, to try to get rid of it as quickly as possible. We think good gardens have only flowers, only pleasant things, only beauty and light. So we judge ourselves harshly for the compost, for having pain, for not being healed yet, for still struggling with things we think we should be over by now. But the Buddha taught something radical about this. He taught that our suffering, when we turn toward it with awareness rather than away from it with avoidance, becomes the raw material for wisdom and compassion. He didn't say suffering is good or that we should seek it out. He said it's inevitable, it's part of being human, and when we learn to work with it skillfully, it transforms us. Think about nettles for a moment. If you've ever encountered stinging nettles in the wild, you know they're unpleasant. They sting when you touch them, leaving your skin burning and irritated. Your first instinct is to avoid them, to see them as purely negative, a plant that shouldn't be there. But nettles, it turns out, are incredibly nutritious. They're rich in iron, vitamins, and minerals. Herbalists have used them for centuries to support health. Yes, they sting. That's real. That matters. That's not to be dismissed. But they're not only their sting, they're also nourishment, if you learn how to work with them. Your pain is like this. Your anxiety, your loneliness, your anger, your fear, they sting, absolutely. They're uncomfortable, sometimes unbearable, but they're also carrying information. They're pointing to something that needs attention, care, understanding. The loneliness might be showing you a genuine need for connection. The anger might be protecting a boundary that was violated. The fear might be asking you to slow down and assess before moving forward. The anxiety might be accumulated stress that needs release. When we learn to approach these feelings with curiosity rather than judgment, with, "What are you trying to tell me?" rather than, "Why are you ruining my life?" they start to transform from enemies into teachers. But here's what's tricky about human nature, about how our attention works in the garden. We're naturally drawn to the compost more than the flowers. Think about your day today or yesterday. If 10 things went well and 1 thing went badly, which one occupies your thoughts tonight? If you received 9 compliments and 1 criticism, which one do you remember word for word? This isn't a character flaw. This is evolution. Our ancestors survived because they remembered the dangerous berry, the threatening situation, the thing that could hurt them. Brains that paid more attention to negative information were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. So we inherited brains that are like searchlights for problems, constantly scanning for what's wrong, what's dangerous, what needs fixing. It kept us alive as a species, but it also means we walk through our gardens seeing primarily the weeds, the bare patches, the plants that aren't thriving, and we miss the flowers that are actually blooming right now. You finish a presentation at work. 15 people tell you it was excellent, helpful, clear. 1 person looks bored. On the drive home, which response are you replaying? You have a good day with your kids, patient, present, enjoying each other. Then you snap at them once before bed. As you fall asleep, are you remembering the good hours or the one bad moment? You're learning something new, a language, an instrument, a skill. You make progress. You have moments of success. But what dominates your inner talk? Usually all the ways you're not good enough yet, all the mistakes, all the evidence that you're struggling. The compost pile gets all the attention while the flowers bloom unnoticed. Someone once asked a friend a simple question that cracked something open. The friend had been spiraling in self-criticism, recounting in detail all the feedback that told him he wasn't good enough, all the ways he'd fallen short. Every word of criticism was sharp and clear in his memory. And the question was just this: can you remember one piece of good feedback? He couldn't. Not one specific, detailed, word-for-word piece of positive feedback. He knew intellectually that people had said kind things, affirming things, but the details had evaporated, while the criticism remained etched in permanent ink. This is the human condition. This is the garden tending itself poorly, giving all the water and attention to what we wish wasn't there, starving what's trying to grow. So what do we do with this? How do we tend the garden more skillfully? First, we meet ourselves with curiosity instead of judgment. When something painful arises, loneliness, anxiety, shame, anger, the instinct is to immediately judge it. I shouldn't feel this way. What's wrong with me? I need to fix this right now. If I were better, more healed, more enlightened, I wouldn't have this feeling. That's judgment. And judgment is like harsh weather. It doesn't help anything grow. It just beats things down. Curiosity sounds different. Curiosity says, loneliness is here. I wonder where this is coming from. Not as an intellectual puzzle to solve, but as a genuine opening to understanding. Where does this pain come from? Not, what's wrong with me for having this pain, but what in my history, my present circumstances, my unmet needs might be giving rise to this feeling right now. This shift from judgment to curiosity is subtle, but revolutionary. Judgment closes things down, makes us defensive, keeps us stuck in patterns of shame and resistance. Curiosity opens things up, creates space, allows for insight and change. Second, we recognize that the you of yesterday is not the you of now. You're not a fixed thing. You're a process, a garden in constant change. The you who was hurt 10 years ago is not the you sitting here now. Yes, there's continuity, the same garden, the same ground, but so much has changed. New seeds have sprouted, new experiences have come, new understanding has grown. When old pain arises, we often relate to it as if we're still that person from the past, still in that situation, still without resources or understanding. But you're not. You're here now, with everything you've learned and survived, and become since then. The Buddha taught this as the doctrine of anatta, not self, or perhaps better translated as not a fixed self. You're not a static, unchanging entity. You're more like a river, continuous, but never the same water twice. You're more like a garden, continuous, but constantly growing, changing, responding to conditions. This means when you meet your pain now, you're meeting it with a different you. A you who has cultivated some awareness, some compassion, some capacity to hold difficult things. The pain might be old, but your relationship to it can be new. Third, we practice acceptance as the doorway to transformation. This is counterintuitive. We think transformation comes from fighting what we don't like, forcing change, white-knuckling our way to being different. We think we have to hate our weeds enough to get rid of them. But in practice, what happens? When we fight our feelings, judge them, try to force them away, they usually just intensify. The anxiety about having anxiety, the shame about feeling shame, the anger at ourselves for being angry. We create layers and layers of suffering on top of the original difficulty. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation. It doesn't mean I like this or I want this to stay forever. It means this is what's here right now, and I can be with it rather than at war with it. The Buddha said, whatever is felt, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, that is to be known as it is. Not changed first, not judged first, but known first, seen clearly, acknowledged. Imagine your loneliness is here, a familiar, unwanted visitor in the garden. You could do what you usually do. Immediately reach for your phone, turn on the television, call someone, start working, do anything to avoid feeling it. Or you could try something different. You could say, "Oh, my loneliness, you're here." Not with sarcasm, not with resignation, but with a kind of gentle, spacious acknowledgement, the way you might greet a sad child, not dismissing them, not trying to immediately fix them, just seeing them, letting them know they can be there. You're here. I feel you. You're uncomfortable, but I'm not going to run away from you right now. I'm going to let you be here, in this space of awareness, and we're going to breathe together. This is acceptance. And something surprising often happens in acceptance. The feeling doesn't necessarily disappear, but it stops growing more intense. It stops feeding on our resistance to it. And in that space of being with it rather than fighting it, understanding can arise. Maybe you realize the loneliness is actually pointing to a need for deeper connection, for authentic conversation, for being truly seen. That's information you can work with. That's the beginning of skillful change. Maybe you realize the loneliness has been there for a long time, underneath all your busyness, and it's actually asking for your attention and care. That's the first step toward healing. Or maybe you simply realize you can be with loneliness without it destroying you. You're bigger than any single feeling. You can hold it the way the ocean holds a wave. The wave is real. It's there, but it doesn't define or limit the ocean. This is the wisdom of tending the garden with acceptance. Not pretending the weeds are flowers, not ignoring the compost, but also not being at war with the reality of what's growing right now. And gradually, with this kind of attention, curious, accepting, non-judgmental, the garden begins to shift on its own. Not because you forced it, but because you created conditions for transformation rather than conditions for entrenchment. The Buddha taught that when we stop feeding our suffering with resistance and judgment, when we meet it with awareness and compassion, instead, it naturally begins to transform. Not overnight, not magically, but gradually, the way gardens change through patient tending rather than violent restructuring. You're a garden, a complex, ever-changing ecosystem of thoughts and feelings and patterns and possibilities. Some of what's growing is exactly what you want. Some of it isn't. That's not a problem to be fixed instantly. That's a garden to be tended patiently, skillfully, with curiosity and care. You get to choose, at least partially, what you water. You get to notice when you're standing in rain that isn't nourishing you and make a choice to step away. You get to turn toward your compost with courage, knowing it holds the potential for rich soil. You get to remember that the flowers are there too, even when your attention keeps drifting to the weeds. And most of all, you get to tend this garden with kindness, the kind of patient, non-judgmental, curious kindness that a good gardener brings to their work. Not harsh criticism, not violent intervention, but steady presence and care. That's the practice. That's the path. Not perfecting the garden, but learning to tend it with wisdom and love. There's a silence that happens in conversations, but it's not the silence of listening. It's the silence of waiting for the other person to finish so you can say what you've been preparing to say, waiting for your turn, waiting for the gap you can fill with your own story, your own perspective, your own needs. We live in a world that has largely forgotten how to listen. Not hearing, we hear plenty. Sound waves reach our ears constantly. But listening, real listening, the kind that creates space for another person to be fully present and fully themselves, that's become rare. Think about your last few conversations. How many of them involved someone truly listening to you? Not nodding while planning their response, not waiting impatiently for you to stop talking, not immediately jumping to advice or comparison or changing the subject to their own experience, but actually receiving what you were saying with full attention. And how often did you offer that quality of listening to someone else? We're living at a pace that doesn't support deep listening. We're overstimulated, overwhelmed, always half present, because there's always something else demanding our attention. We're trained by every screen we touch to broadcast rather than receive, to perform rather than connect. And so we end up in rooms full of people, all talking, none truly listening. Everyone broadcasting their story into the void, hoping someone will care, while simultaneously scanning for the next opportunity to share their own experience. But there's an ancient teaching that offers surprising wisdom about where listening actually begins. In the early Buddhist texts, there's a story about two acrobats, a teacher and his young student. They perform together, balancing on a tall bamboo pole, their lives depending on coordination and presence. One day they were discussing how to keep each other safe during their dangerous act. The teacher said, "You watch me, and I'll watch you, and that way we'll protect each other." It sounds reasonable, doesn't it? We take care of each other by focusing on each other. That's what we're taught about relationships, about community, about being good people. Put others first, watch out for them, make sure they're okay. But the student, named Meda Kathalika, said something that turned this wisdom on its head. "Not so, teacher. You watch yourself, and I'll watch myself. That way, each watching ourselves will protect each other." When the Buddha heard about this exchange, he said the student was absolutely right. This is how we truly take care of each other, by establishing ourselves in mindfulness first, by being grounded in our own presence, and from that stable ground, we naturally protect and support those around us. This teaching completely reframes what it means to be present for others. We think being there for someone means abandoning ourselves, forgetting our own needs, putting all our attention on them. And sometimes we do need to set aside our agenda and truly receive another person. But if we're not grounded in ourselves first, if we haven't learned to listen inward to what's actually here in us, we don't have much to offer. You can't give what you don't have. You can't offer presence if you're not present. You can't hold space for someone else's feelings if you're drowning in your own unacknowledged emotions. This is why listening begins with listening to yourself. Not in a selfish way, not in a way that ignores others, but in a way that establishes you in awareness so you have something real to offer when you turn toward others. What does it mean to listen to yourself? It means pausing occasionally to check what's actually here right now. Not what should be here, not what you wish was here, but what is present in your actual experience this moment. There's tightness in your shoulders. There's a thought looping about something you said earlier. There's irritation just under the surface. There's exhaustion you've been pushing through. There's a feeling you can't quite name, but can feel in your chest. Can you acknowledge that? Can you give it a moment of attention, not to fix it or analyze it or make it go away, but just to let it be known? The Buddha taught about wise attention, paying attention skillfully to what's actually happening rather than to our stories about what's happening. This begins with the simple practice of listening inward, body, breath, feeling tone, thoughts, just noticing what's here without immediately reacting. When we develop this capacity, something interesting happens in how we're able to be with others. We become less reactive, less defensive, more spacious. We can hear someone else's pain without immediately drowning in our own. We can hold their joy without envy or comparison. We become like the acrobat who watches themselves carefully so they can move skillfully And in that skillful movement, everyone benefits. But listening doesn't stop with ourselves. Once we're grounded, once we've established ourselves in presence, we can offer something rare and precious, the gift of being truly heard. There's another teaching story from the early Buddhist community that shows what this looks like in practice. In the monastic Sangha, there was a monk who became seriously ill. His illness was severe, and because of it, his body began to smell. The odor was unpleasant, difficult to be around. One by one, the other monks stopped visiting him. They had their reasons. They were busy with practice, with duties, with their own concerns. The sick monk was left alone in his suffering, abandoned by the very community that had vowed to support each other. The Buddha, walking through the monastery, discovered this monk lying there, uncared for and isolated. He didn't lecture the other monks about compassion. He didn't send someone else to do the work. He called Ananda, his attendant, and together they bathed the sick monk themselves. They cleaned his wounds, washed his robes, made him comfortable. Then the Buddha gathered the community and taught them something essential. Those who would care for me should care for the sick. If you would nurse me, nurse those who are ill. This teaching is about more than physical illness. It's about our willingness to be present for suffering, in ourselves and in others, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it smells bad, even when we'd rather turn away. Most of us abandon people in their difficulty, not dramatically, not with cruelty, but through subtle withdrawal. When someone is struggling, really struggling, not just having a bad day, but going through something that might last months or years, we often drift away. We don't know what to say. We feel helpless. Their pain makes us uncomfortable because it reminds us of our own vulnerability. So we stop calling as much, stop visiting, send a text instead of showing up, gradually create distance until we're no longer present at all. But being present for suffering doesn't require having answers or being able to fix things. It requires what the Buddha demonstrated: simply showing up, staying there, doing what needs doing, without flinching away. This is the deepest form of listening. Being present for what is, even when what is difficult, messy, uncomfortable, or doesn't resolve quickly. And here's what the sick monk story teaches us about community. We're not meant to do this alone. The Buddha didn't send the sick monk off to heal by himself. He didn't say, "Be mindful of your illness," and leave him isolated with his suffering. He brought presence. He brought care. He brought the community back to their responsibility to each other. Sometimes when we're struggling, we think we need to figure it all out alone, process it completely by ourselves before we can rejoin others. We isolate with our pain, digging deeper and deeper into analysis, trying to understand every dimension of our suffering before we allow ourselves to connect. But there's another way. We can let ourselves be held by collective presence. We can acknowledge our pain while also opening to the care and connection available around us. Imagine you're sitting with people you trust, and suddenly something triggers old grief, or anxiety, or fear. The instinct might be to excuse yourself, go process alone, disappear into your inner world until you've dealt with it. But what if you could say, even just to yourself, this feeling is here, and I'm going to let it be here while I also stay present for this moment, for these people, for this shared experience. Not bypassing the feeling, not pretending it isn't there, but also not abandoning the present moment and the people in it to chase the feeling down every corridor of memory and meaning. Sometimes, the healing we need isn't in intense self-examination, but in allowing ourselves to be part of something larger than our individual suffering. In letting collective energy hold our pain, rather than insisting we carry it entirely alone. The Buddha taught about Sangha, spiritual community, as one of the 3 refuges. We take refuge in the Buddha, the awakened nature within us. We take refuge in the Dharma, the truth, and the teachings. And we take refuge in the Sangha, the community of practice and shared humanity. Taking refuge in Sangha means recognizing that we don't have to carry everything alone, that there's healing in being held by collective presence, in being part of a web of connection that supports us even when we feel broken. But this requires vulnerability, being willing to be seen in our struggle, trusting that others can hold our pain without fixing or judging it. And it requires that we offer that same holding to others when they need it. Which brings us to the practical question, how do we actually do this? How do we cultivate the capacity to listen deeply, both to ourselves and to others? Start with one conversation this week. Just one, where you practice listening as a meditation, as an offering, as a radical act of presence. Before the conversation, listen to yourself first. Check in. What's here in me right now? Am I grounded enough to be present for someone else? If not, what do I need to establish myself in awareness? Maybe just a few conscious breaths. Maybe a moment of feeling your feet on the ground. Just enough to be here, actually here, not lost in your own swirl of thoughts and feelings. Then, when the other person speaks, practice receiving what they're saying. Put your phone away, actually away, not just face down where you can see it light up. Turn your body toward them. Make eye contact when it feels natural. Let there be pauses instead of rushing to fill every silence. Listen not just to their words, but to what's underneath the words. Notice their body language, the way their hands move, the way their voice changes when they talk about certain things, the way their eyes shift or hold steady. These are all part of what they're communicating, often more truthful than the words themselves. When they finish a thought, don't immediately jump in with your own story or advice. Pause. Breathe. Maybe say, "Tell me more about that," or "How did that feel for you?" Or simply, "I hear you." Notice what's happening in you as you listen. Do you feel the urge to interrupt, to redirect, to make it about you? Can you notice that urge without acting on it? Can you stay present even when it's uncomfortable? Even when you don't know what to say? Even when you can't fix what they're sharing? Real listening is an act of love. It says, "You matter enough for me to set down my own agenda and be here with you." It says, "Your experience is valid and worth my attention." It says, "You don't have to be different or better or fixed for me to be fully present with you." In a world where everyone is broadcasting and no one is receiving, the person who listens becomes a gift. A rare gift. A gift that costs nothing but attention, and yet is more valuable than most things we buy or achieve. So this week, try it. Watch yourself. Establish yourself in presence first. Then turn that grounded awareness toward another person and really listen. Listen to yourself. Listen to them. Listen to the moment itself. What's being communicated beyond the words? And notice what unfolds when someone feels truly heard. Notice how they relax, open up, become more themselves. Notice how you feel more connected, more human, more alive. This is the art we're reclaiming, one conversation at a time. Not because we're trying to be perfect listeners, but because we're recognizing that real connection requires real presence, and real presence begins with the simple, profound act of listening. You're at the airport. The security line was long. You barely made it through with time to spare, and now you're sitting at the gate, waiting for boarding to begin. Your flight is in 40 minutes. Everything is fine. You made it. You can breathe. Except you can't quite breathe, can you? There's a tension in the air. You can feel it in your body, in the bodies around you, in the collective energy of everyone waiting at this gate. People are standing even though there are empty seats. They're hovering near the boarding area even though nothing's happening yet. They're checking their phones, checking the departure board, checking their boarding passes for the 15th time. The energy is restless, anxious, competitive, and you're part of it, whether you realize it or not. Then the announcement comes. We'll now begin boarding. First class and passengers needing assistance, please come forward. You look down at your boarding pass. Group 5. You watch as a handful of people walk up to the gate agent, confident, unhurried, privileged. They don't have to rush. They were always going to board first. And something happens inside you. Maybe it's subtle, so quick you barely notice it. Or maybe it's obvious, a familiar feeling you've had 1,000 times. A tightening, a comparison, a small voice that says, they're better than you. They have something you don't. They're worth more. It's not rational. You know that. A boarding group is just a boarding group. It doesn't define your worth as a human being. But the feeling is there anyway. Inferiority. Not enough. On the outside looking in at a club you don't belong to. Group 1, please come forward. More people stand, gather their bags, move toward the gate. And the energy shifts again. Now it's not just the first-class passengers who are better than you. It's also Group 1. The hierarchy is clear, and your place in it is near the bottom. You're still sitting, waiting for Group 5, but your mind is no longer here at the gate. It's spinning through comparisons, judgments, stories about what this all means. Why aren't you in Group 1? What choices led to you being in Group 5? If you were more successful, made more money, had your life more together, you'd be up there with them. Or maybe you swing the other way, superiority instead of inferiority. Looking at the people in first class and judging them for their privilege, their waste, their participation in a system of inequality. Either way, you're not at peace. You're caught in comparison, in resistance, in a story about how things should be different than they are. Groups 2 and 3, welcome aboard. The crowd thickens around the gate. People are standing now, even if their group hasn't been called, positioning themselves, ready to surge forward the moment they hear their number. The energy is almost frantic, as if the plane might leave without them, as if there isn't a seat with their name on it waiting, as if this rushing matters. And here you are, swept up in it. Maybe you pull out your laptop, check your email one more time, make yourself look busy and important. See, I'm not just sitting here waiting. I'm working. I'm productive. I matter, even if I'm only Group 5. Or maybe you stand up, gather your bags, even though your group won't be called for another 10 minutes. Join the mass of people hovering and waiting and radiating collective anxiety. This is the collective consciousness we swim in. This is the water we don't even notice because we've been in it so long. Competition, comparison, never enough, always behind, rush, push, prove yourself, don't get left behind. But what if, right here, in this moment, you paused? What if you took a breath and noticed what's actually happening? You're sitting in a chair at an airport gate. You have a ticket for a seat on a plane that will take you somewhere you want or need to go. The plane is right there. You can see it through the window. It's not leaving without you. Everyone with a boarding pass will get on. No one is being left behind. There is literally nothing to rush toward. Yes, you'll board later than first class. And when you do, you'll walk down the same jet bridge, through the same door, onto the same plane, to a seat that will get you to the same destination at the same time as everyone else. The rushing changes nothing about the outcome. It only changes your experience of this moment. So you have a choice right here. You can continue being pushed by the collective energy, standing when you don't need to stand, hovering when you could be sitting, letting comparison and anxiety run the show. You can spend these 10 minutes until Group 5 is called in a state of low-grade stress about something that doesn't actually require stress. Or you can be free. Not free from the airport, not free from being Group 5, not free from the situation, but free within it. Free in your being while the doing unfolds exactly as it will anyway. What does that freedom look like? It looks like sitting back down if you've stood up unnecessarily. It looks like taking a breath and feeling your body in the chair. It looks like noticing the anxiety arising and not believing every story it tells you about what this means. It looks like watching Group 1, 2, 3, 4 board and genuinely wishing them well instead of comparing yourself to them. It looks like noticing when that inner voice starts its litany of not good enough, not rich enough, not successful enough, and choosing not to water those seeds. It looks like relaxing into the present moment, this moment where you're safe, you're fine, you're exactly where you need to be. And here's where it gets even more interesting. When Group 5 is finally called and you walk up to board, you might notice someone behind you in Group 6 trying to sneak in early, cutting in line, pushing forward with that same frantic energy. And instead of getting defensive, instead of protecting your place in line, instead of adding your tension to their tension, you could step aside. Go ahead. 2 words, 1 gesture, and suddenly you're not being pushed anymore. You're choosing. You're offering something: generosity, space, ease, into a system built on competition and scarcity. That person might look surprised, might not even say thank you, might just rush past without acknowledgement. It doesn't matter. You're not doing it for recognition. You're doing it because you've discovered something. Freedom isn't out there, in better circumstances, or higher boarding groups. Freedom is here, in how you choose to be with what is. The Buddha taught about this. Not about airports specifically, but about freedom in the midst of conditions we can't control. He taught that suffering comes not from the circumstances themselves, but from our relationship to them, our craving for things to be different, our resistance to what is, our constant measuring of ourselves against others. And he taught that freedom is always available, not through changing our external conditions, but through changing our relationship to those conditions. Through awareness, through letting go, through being present, rather than lost in stories about how things should be. This is embodiment. This is what it means to live the teachings instead of just understanding them intellectually. You can know all about mindfulness, read all the books, understand every concept, but if you're still standing at gate 5 radiating anxiety and comparison, the knowing hasn't become being yet. The practice is in the moment. Right there, when the stress arises, when the comparison starts, when you feel the pull to rush or prove or compete, that's the moment of practice. That's where the choice lives. And nobody has to know you're doing it. You can be what you might call a mindful ninja, looking completely ordinary on the outside while inside you're choosing freedom, choosing presence, choosing peace in the midst of collective chaos. The person next to you sees someone sitting calmly at a gate. They don't know you're practicing. They don't know you just noticed anxiety and chose not to follow it. They don't know you're embodying freedom right there in group 5. This is how practice becomes life. Not in dramatic moments of enlightenment on a meditation cushion, but in the mundane moments, at airports, in grocery store lines, in traffic, in all the small situations where the collective consciousness is pushing us towards stress, and we can choose something different. Think about a grocery store checkout. You've been waiting in line, getting closer to the front, and then another register opens. I can help someone over here. Watch what happens. Everyone rushes, trying to be first to the new line, jockeying for position, frustrated if someone gets there before them. The same energy as the airport: comparison, competition, scarcity thinking. But you could pause. You could let someone else go first. You could choose to arrive home 3 minutes later than you would have otherwise, and use those 3 minutes to practice being at peace rather than being pushed. Or traffic. You're in the left lane, and it's moving slowly. The right lane seems to be moving faster. Do you change lanes? Then watch your old lane start moving faster, then change back, caught in the endless game of trying to get ahead. Or do you stay where you are, breathe, know that you'll arrive when you arrive, and use the time to be present rather than stressed? These seem like small choices. They are small choices. But small choices repeated throughout a day, throughout a life, add up to a completely different way of being in the world. You become someone who isn't pushed around by every wave of collective anxiety. You become someone who can be at peace in situations that used to steal your peace. You become someone who offers something different into the spaces you occupy. A little more ease, a little more generosity, a little more freedom. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to wait for perfect conditions to practice this. You don't have to wait until you're enlightened or healed, or finally have your life together. You can practice right now, in whatever situation you're in, with whatever level of awareness you have in this moment. You are the condition, not the circumstances. You're not always in control of those. But you are the condition that determines how you meet the circumstances. You are the condition that decides whether this moment is experienced as freedom or as stress, as presence or as resistance, as peace or as another small battle in the ongoing war against what is. So the next time you're at an airport, or in line somewhere, or in traffic, or in any situation where you feel that familiar pull toward anxiety, or comparison, or rushing, pause. Notice what's happening inside. Notice the thoughts, the feelings, the urge to do something, to make yourself feel better, or more important, or less behind. And then ask yourself, is any of this actually necessary? Or can I choose something else right here? Can I be peace instead of being pushed? Can I embody freedom in group 5? Can I offer generosity when everything around me is teaching competition? The answer is yes, you can. Not perfectly, not every time, but more and more as you practice. And when you do, you'll discover something that changes everything. Freedom isn't something you achieve in the future when conditions are finally right. Freedom is something you choose right now, in this moment, in this body, with these circumstances. That's the practice. That's the path. That's embodiment. Living the teachings, not just understanding them. Being the freedom, not just thinking about it. And it starts at gate 5, in the grocery line, in traffic, in all the ordinary moments where life gives us the chance to choose who we want to be. There's a particular kind of suffering that comes from wanting things to be just right. Not good enough. Perfect. Not trying their best, doing it exactly the way you would do it. Not learning and growing, already there, already flawless, already meeting the standard that lives so clearly in your mind and somehow refuses to manifest in reality. If you've ever tried to teach someone something you care deeply about, you know this suffering. You show them how to do it, carefully, precisely, with all the details that matter to you. And then you watch them do it their way, which is not your way, which is not the right way, which is frankly a bit painful to witness. Maybe it's teaching your child to tie their shoes, and they do it with the loops all wrong. Maybe it's training someone at work and they keep missing the steps you've emphasized 3 times. Maybe it's showing a friend how to cook your grandmother's recipe, and they add the ingredients in the wrong order. The tightness comes immediately, doesn't it? That squeeze in your chest, that urge to correct, that voice in your head saying, no, not like that, like this, while you try to maintain a patient smile. And underneath that tightness is a story. If they would just do it right, if they would just listen, if they would just care as much as you care, everything would be better. The problem isn't your perfectionism. The problem is their inability to meet your completely reasonable standards. This is such familiar territory for most of us. This belief that the world would be better if everyone would just do things correctly, which really means do things our way. There's an old teaching story that cuts right to the heart of this. In 17th century Japan, there was a Zen master named Bankei who taught at a monastery. He was known for his direct, simple teachings and his profound compassion. Students came from all over to practice with him, and the community grew large. Among the monks was one who had a problem. He stole. Not once, not accidentally, but repeatedly. Small things at first, then larger things. Other monks' belongings would go missing and eventually turn up in this monk's quarters. The community was in an uproar. This was unacceptable. This monk was breaking the precepts, violating trust, disrupting the harmony of practice. He needed to be expelled immediately. They went to Bankei with their demand. Send this monk away. He's ruining everything. His presence is making it impossible for the rest of us to practice properly. He doesn't belong here. Bankei listened to all of this and then said something that shocked them. If you expel this monk, where will he go to learn? If you cannot accept him with his imperfections, then I will leave instead. You are all wise and good practitioners. You can find another teacher anywhere, but this monk needs this community. If we expel him, we abandon him to his suffering with no path forward. The monks were stunned. They had expected support for their righteous anger, validation of their standards, agreement that imperfection cannot be tolerated. Instead, their teacher was willing to leave rather than expel someone who was clearly in the wrong. So they stayed. The thief stayed, and something interesting began to happen. The monk who stole, knowing he had been accepted despite his worst behavior, knowing the community chose to keep him, even when he didn't deserve it, began to change. Not overnight, not dramatically, but gradually. The stealing stopped. He began to practice more sincerely. Eventually, he transformed into one of the community's most dedicated practitioners. What changed him wasn't harsh judgment, wasn't punishment, wasn't being held to an impossible standard of immediate perfection. What changed him was being accepted in his imperfection, being held by a community that refused to give up on him, being taught by a teacher who valued his potential more than his past mistakes. This story is medicine for those of us who struggle with perfectionism, either toward ourselves or toward others. Because here's what we often miss. When we demand perfection, when we judge harshly, when we can't tolerate people learning at their own pace, in their own way, we're not helping them improve. We're actually making it harder for them to grow. Think about a time someone was harsh with you about your mistakes. Maybe a teacher who criticized instead of encouraged. A parent who focused on your failures instead of your efforts, a boss who only noticed what you did wrong. Did that harshness make you better? Or did it make you defensive, anxious, afraid to try, bitter about the impossibility of ever being good enough? Most of us shut down under harsh judgment. We stop taking risks because failure is too painful. We stop being creative because creativity requires experimentation. And experimentation means things won't be perfect. We stop growing because growth requires making mistakes. And mistakes are evidence that we're not good enough. The same is true when we're the ones doing the judging. When we can't tolerate other people's imperfections, when we're constantly trying to make everyone around us meet our standards, we create an atmosphere where no one can breathe. We think we're helping, we're teaching, we're correcting, we're maintaining standards, but often we're just spreading our own anxiety about not being perfect, projecting our own harsh inner critic onto everyone around us. And here's the really painful part. This way of being makes us bitter. When you spend your energy trying to make everyone perfect, trying to control every outcome, trying to ensure that things are done exactly right, you're fighting a battle you cannot win. Because people will continue to be imperfect. They will continue to learn slowly, make mistakes, do things their own way. They will continue to be human. And your relationship to their humanity, whether you meet it with judgment or with compassion, determines whether you become bitter or remain open. Imagine you're teaching someone something you know well. Maybe it's a skill you've mastered through years of practice, or a tradition that's important to you, or a method you've perfected. You care about this deeply. You want to pass it on correctly. And the person you're teaching keeps getting it wrong. They miss the nuance. They skip steps. They add their own interpretation that completely misses the point. You correct them once, twice, 3 times, and still they don't get it quite right. In that moment, you have a choice. You can tighten further, get frustrated, critical, impatient. Why aren't you listening? Why can't you do it the way I showed you? This isn't that hard. And watch as your harshness makes them more nervous, more likely to make mistakes, more closed to actually learning. Or you can soften. Remember that you also once didn't know this, that you also made mistakes when learning, that everyone's path to mastery looks different. You can ask yourself, am I teaching from love right now, or from judgment? Am I offering help, or am I trying to control? Am I supporting their growth, or am I protecting my own ego? This shift from judgment to compassion is the practice. And it's not easy, especially when you care deeply about the thing you're teaching. The Buddha taught about right speech as part of the Eightfold Path, speech that is truthful, that is kind, that is helpful, that is timely. All 4 of these together Not just truthful, but also kind. Not just helpful, but also timely. When we correct someone harshly, we might be truthful. Yes, they did it wrong. But we're missing the kindness, the helpfulness, the timing that would actually support their learning. What if instead of "no, not like that," we said, "Let me show you again. Here's what I've found helpful." What if instead of sighing in frustration, we took a breath and remembered what it felt like to be the student, uncertain and trying? What if we asked ourselves before we speak, is this coming from my desire to help them grow, or from my anxiety about things not being perfect? Because there's a huge difference between those two motivations. One creates spaciousness for learning. The other creates contraction and fear. And the honest truth is, most of us are still learning this ourselves. We're still practicing how to teach from love instead of judgment. We're still working on loosening our grip on how things should be. We're still discovering that our way isn't the only way, that perfection isn't the goal, that presence and care matter more than flawless execution. There's something deeply freeing in admitting this. I'm still learning. I haven't arrived. I still get frustrated when people don't do things my way. I still judge when I mean to be compassionate. I still have a long way to go. But I can also see the aspiration clearly now. I want to teach from love, not from control. I want to offer guidance that helps, rather than corrections that harm. I want to create space for people to learn at their own pace, in their own way, with all the messy imperfection that real learning requires. Like Bankei, who was willing to lose his whole community rather than abandon one struggling monk. That's the direction, valuing people over perfection, choosing compassion over correctness, accepting that growth happens in its own time and cannot be forced. This doesn't mean we never teach, never correct, never have standards. It means we check our motivation first. Are we correcting because it will genuinely help this person, or because their imperfection is making us uncomfortable? Are we teaching because we want to support their growth, or because we need them to validate our way of doing things? The next time you find yourself frustrated by someone's imperfection, whether it's a student, a child, a coworker, a partner, even yourself, pause for a moment. Feel the tightness of wanting things to be different. Notice the judgment rising, and then ask, what would Bankei do? Would he expel the imperfection, or would he make space for it? Would he demand immediate perfection, or would he trust the process of gradual transformation? Would he teach from control or from love? The answer shapes not just the moment, but the relationship, not just the interaction, but your own heart. Because when you choose compassion over judgment, you free both of you, them from the pressure of impossible standards, and you from the suffering of constantly fighting against reality. And gradually, in choosing this again and again, you become someone who can hold imperfection without tightness, who can teach without controlling, who can care deeply about standards, while caring even more deeply about people. That's the practice. That's the aspiration. Not perfection, but presence. Not control, but compassion. Not judgment, but the kind of spacious love that says, you're learning, I'm learning, we're all still learning, and that's exactly as it should be. There's a voice that most of us carry, so constant we barely notice it anymore. It speaks in the morning when you look in the mirror. It speaks when you scroll through social media and see everyone else's curated perfection. It speaks when you compare your career to your peers, your body to the images everywhere, your life to some invisible standard that always seems just out of reach. The voice has many variations, but the message is always the same. You're not enough. Not successful enough, not attractive enough, not accomplished enough, not spiritual enough, not healed enough, not productive enough, not peaceful enough, not present enough, not enlightened enough. You need to be more, do more, fix more, achieve more, transform more. And then maybe, if you work hard enough and improve enough and finally become good enough, you'll be worthy of rest, of love, of simply being here. This is the water we swim in. This is the collective message pumped into us from every direction, so pervasive we think it's just reality, just truth, just the way things are. But what if it's not? What if this message, this relentless, not enough, that drives so much of our striving and our suffering, is not truth at all, but rather a story, a cultural invention, a mechanism that benefits some while exhausting everyone? Think about who profits from you believing you're not enough. The entire advertising industry is built on creating dissatisfaction. You're shown an image of what you should look like, what you should own, how you should live, and the gap between that and your current reality creates a hunger. That hunger drives consumption. Buy this product, this service, this lifestyle, and finally, you'll be enough. Except you won't be. Because the moment you acquire one thing, another, not enough, appears. The moment you achieve one goal, the goalposts move. It's designed to be endless, because satisfied people don't keep buying, don't keep striving, don't keep feeding the machine. But it's not just advertising. It's deeper than that, more systemic. Many of us were raised with these messages from the very beginning. Well-meaning parents who wanted us to succeed, pushed us to do better, be better, achieve more. Teachers who measured our worth by grades and test scores. Peers who reinforced hierarchies of who was cool, attractive, valuable. We learned early that love and acceptance were conditional on performance, on achievement, on being a certain way. And we internalized that conditionality so deeply that even now, as adults, we can't quite believe we're worthy of love just for existing. So we keep pushing, keep improving, keep trying to earn the acceptance that should have been our birthright. And here's what's painful to recognize. This isn't just individual suffering. This is collective. We're all doing this to each other and to ourselves, perpetuating a culture that makes everyone exhausted and no one enough. When you judge yourself harshly, you're more likely to judge others harshly. When you can't accept your own imperfection, you struggle to accept anyone else's. When you're constantly trying to prove your worth, you unconsciously participate in systems that rank and measure and sort people into worthy and unworthy. The discrimination we see in the world, the violence, the separation, the dehumanization, it mirrors the discrimination we carry inside. The way we divide people into categories of better and worse, valuable and disposable, deserving and undeserving, we do this to ourselves first. We look at parts of ourselves and say, this is good, this is acceptable, and other parts and say, this is bad, this must be eliminated. We try to expel the uncomfortable feelings, the unwanted patterns, the aspects of ourselves that don't fit the image of who we think we should be. But what if the path forward isn't more division, more expulsion, more trying to cut away everything that's not perfect? What if the path forward is integration, acceptance, tending to all of it, the light and the shadow, the growth and the struggle, the beauty and the messiness, with equal care? The Buddha taught about the middle way, not punishing ourselves into perfection, not indulging every impulse, but finding a path of wise balance and compassion. He taught that transformation doesn't come from harsh self-judgment, but from clear seeing, combined with kindness. When you see your anger clearly but meet it with compassion, you're here because you're trying to protect something. Let me understand what you need, that anger can transform. When you see your fear clearly but meet it with kindness, you're here because something feels threatening. Let me tend to that fear can soften. But when you see your anger or fear and immediately judge it, reject it, try to force it away, it doesn't transform. It goes underground. It festers. It grows stronger in the dark. The same is true collectively. When we see suffering in the world and respond with more judgment, more separation, more us versus them, the suffering doesn't heal. It intensifies. But when we can hold the suffering with compassion, when we can tend to it rather than reject it, when we can see that the violence and separation out there is connected to the violence and separation we carry in here, then something can shift. This is where the practice becomes radical, becomes revolutionary. What if you woke up tomorrow and decided, just for one day, that you were enough exactly as you are? Not, I'll be enough when I lose weight, get the promotion, fix my anxiety, become more spiritual. But right now, in this body, with this history, with these struggles and these gifts, I am enough. What would change? You might move through your day differently, less frantic, less driven by the anxiety of not measuring up. You might be kinder to yourself when you make a mistake, knowing that mistakes don't diminish your fundamental worth. You might stop comparing yourself to others quite so much, because you're no longer trying to prove anything. And you might find that you're actually kinder to others too, because when you're not constantly judging yourself, you naturally judge others less. When you've accepted your own imperfection, you can hold space for theirs. When you know in your bones that you're enough, you stop needing others to be less than you to feel okay about yourself. This is the gift we can give to the next generation. Not more pressure, not higher standards, not a longer list of what they need to achieve to be acceptable, but permission to be enough as they are. Children learn not from what we say, but from what we embody. If we tell them they're perfect while treating ourselves like we're fundamentally flawed, they learn the latter. If we preach self-love while practicing self-criticism, they learn to criticize themselves. If we say, "You're enough," while acting like we're never enough, they inherit the acting, not the saying. But if we can actually live it, if we can show them through our being what it looks like to accept ourselves, to tend to our struggles with compassion, to move through the world knowing we're fundamentally okay even as we continue to grow and learn, that becomes possible for them too. This is what it means to change culture. Not through grand gestures or perfect activism, but through the daily practice of being with ourselves and each other differently. What if we set an intention together, here, now? Not a rigid resolution or another goal to fail at, but a gentle, collective aspiration to practice knowing we're enough. To notice when the not enough voice arises, and instead of believing it automatically, to pause and ask, is this true? Or is this a story I've inherited, a message I've absorbed, a habit of thinking that doesn't actually serve my growth or well-being? To catch ourselves when we're pushing from a place of, I'm broken and need fixing, and instead see if we can approach growth from a place of, I'm whole and I'm curious about expanding. To recognize that sustainable transformation comes not from self-hatred, but from self-acceptance, not passive resignation, but active compassion for ourselves, as we are right now, which paradoxically creates more space for change than constant criticism ever could. and to remember that this practice ripples outward. When you stop treating yourself like you're not enough, you naturally stop treating others that way too. When you can hold your own complexity with compassion, you can hold the world's complexity with more wisdom. The Buddha taught that all beings have Buddha nature, inherent wisdom, inherent capacity for awakening, inherent worth that isn't earned or achieved, but simply is. Not because you're enlightened or perfect or beyond struggle, but because you're alive, aware, part of this vast web of existence. You don't have to earn your place here. You already belong. The tree doesn't earn its place in the forest by being the tallest or having the most perfect leaves. It belongs because it's part of the forest, contributing to the ecosystem just by being what it is, growing at its own pace, weathering storms, offering what it offers, receiving what it needs. You're like this too. You belong to the web of life not because of what you achieve, but because you're here, breathing, being, contributing your unique presence to the whole. And when we can hold this truth, really hold it, not just understand it intellectually, but feel it in our bodies, in our being, we become part of the solution instead of perpetuating the problem. We become people who build bridges instead of walls, who create connection instead of division, who tend to suffering instead of pushing it away, who offer acceptance instead of constant judgment. This doesn't mean we ignore harmful behavior or enable suffering. It means we recognize that people, including ourselves, are more than their worst moments, their current struggles, their imperfect attempts at living. We hold both accountability and compassion, both standards and acceptance, both the aspiration to grow and the recognition that we're fundamentally okay right now. So as this year ends and another begins, as we think about intentions and aspirations and who we want to become, let's start here. Not with another list of how we need to fix ourselves, but with this simple, revolutionary statement: I am enough. You are enough. We are enough. Right now, with all our imperfections and incompleteness, with all our struggles and our growth still happening, with all the ways we haven't figured it out yet, we are enough. This doesn't mean we stop growing or learning or working toward things. It means we do those things from a foundation of wholeness, rather than from a wound of inadequacy. We grow because we're curious and alive, not because we're broken and need fixing. And when we live from this place, when enough of us live from this place, culture itself begins to shift. The collective consciousness changes. The water we're all swimming in becomes a little less toxic, a little more nourishing. This moment, right here, is your contribution to that shift. Not someday when you're finally perfect, not after you've achieved all your goals, not when you've healed completely from everything that's ever hurt you. Now, in your willingness to consider that maybe, just maybe, you've been enough all along. And as you offer this to yourself, you're offering it to everyone around you. Permission to be human, to be imperfect, to be in process, to be enough while still becoming. That's the gift. That's the practice. That's how we change not just ourselves, but the world we're creating together, one moment of self-acceptance at a time, one breath of knowing we're enough exactly as we are. Right now, as you read these words, your heart is beating. Feel it for a moment. That steady rhythm, that pulse of life moving through you without any effort on your part. It beats while you sleep, while you work, while you worry, while you rest. It's been beating since before you were born, in the darkness of your mother's womb, and it will beat until the moment your life completes. But your heartbeat isn't solitary. It's echoing the heartbeat of your mother, which echoed the heartbeat of her mother, which echoed back through generations you never knew, but whose lives made yours possible. Every breath you take contains atoms that once moved through their lungs. Every cell in your body carries genetic memory from ancestors, whose names you'll never know, but whose struggles, whose survival, whose love brought you here. And your heartbeat reaches forward too. If you have children or will have children, your rhythm becomes part of theirs. If you don't have biological children, your actions, your words, your way of being still ripples into the future, influencing people you'll never meet, shaping a world you'll never see. This is what the Buddha taught about when he spoke of interbeing, the truth that nothing exists separately, that everything arises in connection with everything else, that the boundaries we draw between self and other, between me and world, between past and future, are real in one sense, but illusory in a deeper sense. You are not a separate self, isolated and independent. You are a process, a flow, a meeting place of countless conditions, genetic, cultural, environmental, historical, all converging in this moment to create the experience of you. Look at your hand right now. Seems solid, seems clearly yours, seems separate from everything else. But that hand is made of food you ate that came from soil and sun and rain, and the labor of farmers and truck drivers and grocery store workers. It's made of water that cycled through clouds and rivers and treatment plants and pipes to reach you. It's shaped by DNA from your parents and their parents, stretching back millennia. Where does your hand begin and the rest of the world end? The boundaries are fuzzy, permeable, arbitrary. You are continuous with the world, not separate from it. And this isn't just poetic philosophy. It's practical truth that changes how we live. When you understand interbeing, when you really feel it in your body, and not just know it in your head, you can't consume without awareness of impact. You can't act without recognizing that your actions ripple outward, touching systems and beings far beyond what you can see. The meal you eat connects you to soil health, to farming practices, to labor conditions, to climate patterns, to the future availability of food for people you'll never meet. The words you speak create emotional weather that affects not just the person hearing them, but everyone that person encounters afterward, carrying your tone, your kindness or harshness into interactions you'll never witness. You're not a separate point acting on the world from the outside. You're a thread in the web, and when you move, the whole web vibrates. This understanding could be overwhelming. If everything connects to everything, how can we possibly make good choices? But actually, it simplifies things. Because if you're not separate from the environment, then caring for the environment isn't some altruistic duty. It's self-care. The air you breathe tomorrow is being created by trees today. The water you'll drink next year is moving through watersheds right now. The climate your children will inherit is being shaped by actions taken this moment. When you live deeply in this present moment, when you're fully here, fully aware, fully engaged with what is, that itself becomes your best contribution. Not because you're trying to save the world, but because conscious, present living naturally tends toward less harm, more care, greater wisdom about how your choices ripple outward. And here's where this expansive understanding meets the intimate reality of your daily life. Tomorrow morning, you'll wake up. You'll open your eyes to a new day, and in that first moment of consciousness, you'll have a choice you might not even realize you're making. You can wake up already anxious about everything you have to do, already behind, before you've even started, already moving from task to task in your mind, while your body is still in bed. Or you can pause. You can take one conscious breath before reaching for your phone. You can feel your body in the bed, hear the sounds around you, notice the light or darkness, and ask yourself a simple question. I have 24 hours ahead of me. How would I like to live them? Not what do I need to accomplish today? Not how will I get through everything on my list? But how would I like to be as I move through this day? This question changes everything, because most of us focus on the doing, the tasks, the goals, the productivity, the achievement. We measure the day by what we got done, what we checked off, what we accomplished. And we miss the being, the quality of presence we brought, the kindness or harshness in our interactions, the peace or anxiety we carried through our hours. But being is the foundation. How you are determines how you do what you do. You can wash dishes with resentment, mind elsewhere, hands moving mechanically, while you replay an argument or worry about tomorrow. Or you can wash dishes with presence, feeling the warm water, seeing the soap bubbles, engaging fully with this simple act of care for the things that nourish you. Same task, completely different quality of being. And that quality ripples outward. The person who washes dishes with presence brings that presence to their next interaction. The person who washes dishes with resentment carries that resentment forward. The Buddha taught about mindfulness, concentration, and insight as the threefold training, not as abstract concepts, but as lived practices that shape every moment. Mindfulness means being aware of what's actually happening right now, rather than lost in thought about past or future. Concentration means gathering your scattered attention and bringing it fully to what's here. Insight means seeing clearly into the nature of things, impermanence, into being, the causes of suffering, and the path to freedom. These aren't things you do only on a meditation cushion. They're ways of being that you can bring to every moment of your day. When you're stuck in traffic, you can practice mindfulness, noticing the frustration arising, feeling it in your body, seeing the thoughts that spin around it, and choosing whether to believe and follow those thoughts or simply let them be while you breathe and accept what is. When you're listening to someone speak, you can practice concentration, gathering your attention away from your own thoughts, your planned response, your phone, and bringing it fully to this person, this moment, this connection. When you notice yourself rushing through your morning routine, you can practice insight, seeing that the rushing comes from a belief that you don't have enough time, investigating whether that's actually true, recognizing that this moment is your life happening and you're missing it in the attempt to get to some future moment that never quite arrives. This is what it means to embody the teachings rather than just know them. You probably have a busy schedule tomorrow. Most of us do. There will be things you need to do, places you need to be, responsibilities you need to meet. You can't change that, but you can change how you show up for it. You can show up rushed and resentful, or you can show up present and engaged. You can show up defending and protecting, or you can show up open and curious. You can show up already exhausted from everything you think you should be, or you can show up as you actually are, enough for this moment. And when things don't go as planned, which they won't, because life is like that, you can invoke kindness. The meeting runs long. Traffic is worse than expected. Someone is short with you for reasons that have nothing to do with you. Your carefully planned day falls apart by 10 in the morning. In that moment, you have a choice. You can tighten further, add your frustration to the situation, make everything harder for yourself and everyone around you. Or you can soften, breathe, find even a small bit of kindness for yourself and the imperfect unfolding of the day. This isn't weakness. This isn't being passive or accepting whatever happens without boundaries or agency. This is wisdom, recognizing that your resistance to what's already happened only adds suffering to difficulty, that your kindness in challenging moments is often the most powerful thing you can offer. What you cultivate in these small moments adds up to the texture of your life. If you practice kindness when things go wrong, you become someone for whom kindness is available even in difficult times. If you practice presence during mundane tasks, you become someone who can be present for the meaningful ones too. If you practice freedom from collective anxiety at the airport or in line or in traffic, you become someone who carries freedom as a quality of being rather than constantly seeking it as a future achievement. Loving kindness, freedom, peace, these aren't abstract notions or nice ideas. They're ways of being that you develop through practice, through choosing them again and again in small moments until they become woven into the fabric of who you are. And this is your gift to the web. Remember, you're not separate. Your state of being affects everyone around you. Your anxiety contributes to collective anxiety. Your peace contributes to collective peace. Your presence makes presence more available to others. Your kindness ripples outward in ways you'll never fully track. So when you ask yourself tomorrow morning, how would I like to live these 24 hours? You're not just asking for yourself. You're asking for everyone your life will touch today. Everyone who will feel your presence or your absence. Everyone who will be affected by whether you show up, rushed and defended, or present and open. The new year ahead is an open canvas. But actually, every day is an open canvas. Every moment is a brushstroke. The way you speak to your child, the attention you bring to your work, the patience or impatience you carry through the grocery store, the awareness or unconsciousness you bring to what you consume, and how you move through the world. You don't need to make grand gestures or dramatic changes. You don't need to wait until you're somehow better or more healed or more enlightened to start painting. You're already painting every moment. The only question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, with awareness or on autopilot, with care or with carelessness. The Buddha taught that we're always practicing something. If we're not practicing presence, we're practicing distraction. If we're not practicing kindness, we're practicing harshness. If we're not practicing freedom, we're practicing being pushed around by every impulse and anxiety. So what will you practice tomorrow? Not for the whole day. That's too ambitious, too set up for failure. Just for one moment. The moment you wake up, or the moment you wash your face, or the first time someone speaks to you. Just one moment where you pause and ask, how would I like to be right now? And maybe the answer is present, kind, free from the pushing, connected to the web rather than feeling alone, aware that my heartbeat echoes backward through generations and forward into a future I'm helping create. This awareness doesn't have to make you heavy with responsibility. It can actually lighten things. When you realize you're part of something vast and ongoing, that your life is a thread in an ancient and continuing weave. Your individual struggles become both more significant and less overwhelming. More significant because they actually matter, because how you tend to your own consciousness contributes to collective consciousness, because your healing or your suffering affects the whole web. Less overwhelming because you don't have to do it all alone, because you're held by the same web you're part of, because the wisdom and strength of countless beings flows through you whether you realize it or not. So tomorrow, when you wake, before you reach for your phone, or start your mental to-do list, or jump into the stream of urgency and obligation, pause. Feel your heartbeat. That rhythm that connects you to everyone who came before and everyone who will come after. Take one conscious breath. Ask yourself how you'd like to be today. And then gently, with kindness for yourself and awareness of the web you're woven into, take your first step into the day. Not perfect, not figured out, not somehow better than you are, but present, intentional, and connected. That's the practice. That's the gift. That's how we paint the canvas together, not through grand gestures, but through small moments of choosing to be awake rather than asleep, to be kind rather than harsh, to be present rather than lost in the endless stream of more, better, later. Your heartbeat in the web, your days as brushstrokes, your being as your greatest contribution. Tomorrow begins now, in this moment of understanding. How will you meet it? So we return to where we began, to that moment of turning, this threshold between what was and what will be. You don't have to wait for January 1st to begin. You don't have to wait until you're healed or ready or somehow better than you are right now. If not now, when? The answer is simple, even if living it isn't always easy. Now. This breath, this moment, this being that you already are, complete, even as you continue growing. The blank page of a new year isn't something to fear. It's possibility. It's space. It's an invitation to show up for your life. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, but presently, one moment at a time. You already have everything you need for this. Not everything you think you need, but everything essential. This breath, this awareness, this capacity to begin again in any moment. Wherever you are listening from right now, whether it's your dawn or your midnight, whether you're alone or surrounded by others, whether you're at peace or struggling, you're not alone in this practice of being human, of learning to be present, of choosing again and again to meet life with awareness. Let yourself rest in this knowing. You're enough. This moment is enough. And tomorrow, when you wake, the practice continues, not as burden, but as gift, not as something to perfect, but as something to live. Thank you for your presence here. Thank you for listening, for being willing to walk this path together. Take a breath now. Feel yourself here. And know that being is enough.